Hello, everybody. Emilie here. We'll get started in just a few. I'm so delighted to see so many familiar faces and names and thrilled to get started. While we give folks a couple minutes to join us here, tell me where you're tuning in from. I always love to see where folks are coming in from. And let me know if this is your first Bossed Up event. We've got Chicago in the house, Vegas, Texas, Brooklyn, SF, DC area, Colorado Springs, Coconut Creek. Place sounds lovely. New York, Denver. Hey, Emily. Lovely to see you here. Hello, friends from New Jersey and Germany. Hi, Olympia. Thanks for tuning in. We are always surprised, Kirby and I. Kirby's online here from Team Bossed Up in Denver as well. And we are always amazed at how many people are tuning in from around the world. We're always adding new time zones to our landing pages, and the requests we get for time zones all across the world always blows us away. Hello from Tampa Bay. It's looking very Florida-like here in Denver today. It's not a cloud in the sky. It's going to be almost 80 here, so I'm feeling the spring vibes. Hello from Falls Church, my old stomping grounds, DC, where I got my start. Actually, Falls Church, Virginia is where one of the first campaigns I ever worked on was based, a congressional campaign there. Very cool. Wow, we've already got 50 folks here. Thanks for being so punctual, y'all. We'll get started here in just a few. So delighted to have you here. All right, we got some more DC friends. You know, Bossed Up started in DC almost 10 years ago now, so I love seeing DC and Denver present. They feel like two homes that I have. Hello from Long Beach. Welcome, welcome. Awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. You'll have to excuse me. I'm going to be sipping lots of water today because my voice is a little off. Did a little too much singing this past weekend. A little too much partying hard here this last weekend. Hello from Fort Collins. A couple of Fort Collins folks. Love seeing Colorado represented. All right, well, let's dive right in. I'm so delighted that you've taken some time to join us here today. This leadership workshop is going to be focused on how to step up and lead teams like a boss. I'm Emilie Aries. I'm Bossed Up's founder and CEO. I'm a speaker. I'm an author. I'm a podcaster. And I will be bringing the Bossed Up podcast back very soon. I should add to this list of titles, I'm the mother of a now 7-month-old who has demanded quite a lot of my time, energy, and attention in the past few months, as you might imagine. So the Bossed Up podcast has had to take a back seat, but we have almost 400 episodes in the Rolodex ready for you to listen to if you haven't already. And if you have listened to every Bossed Up podcast, if you're a loyal pod pal, know that Kirby and I are working on bringing that back now. We just hired on a brand new member of the Bossed Up team who's starting in a week. Our new marketing coordinator is going to help us bring that podcast back to life. So I'm so excited to step up to the mic once again. I really miss the podcast too, Emily. Thank you so much, Nicole, for your kind words. Yeah, motherhood has taken the topic of leadership to a whole other level. I'm really excited to talk more about how that's influencing my approach to leadership. So let me back up. If this is your first ever Bossed Up event, let me know in chat. I know we have a couple of new friends here. I should tell you that I've spent the better part of the last decade, 9 years and counting now, at Bossed Up, helping Fortune 500 companies think about talent retention, gender inclusion, leadership development, and helping women really step up as the boss of their careers and lives. But prior to that, I started my career in the world of campaigns and elections. So I like to say that I bring an advocacy approach to the topic of personal and professional development, because that's really my background, is in advocacy and organizing and bringing people together to make powerful change in our lives. So at Bossed Up, it's our mission to help women and marginalized people of all kinds make radical career progress on their own terms. So I'm reminded, as we're talking about stepping up and leading teams today, of what it really takes for women to get promoted into leadership ranks and get those opportunities to be seen as the leaders that so many of us are. And I think back to almost 15 years ago now, when I graduated in the height of the Great Recession with my fancy Ivy League degree in hand, ready to go conquer the world. And even though the economy was in really bad shape, wildly different than it is right now from a job search standpoint, I was so fortunate to be able to step into a leadership role at a very young age. I was the youngest state director in the nation back in 2009, working on behalf of the newly elected Obama administration to really help organize people in their communities across the state of Rhode Island. That was my turf, the little but small but mighty state of Rhode Island. And I spent my time in that role, really proving myself worthy of the chance that someone had given me to show my leadership chops. So for 2 to almost 3 years, as I was organizing and leading in Rhode Island, I really focused on the people on the ground, the boots on the ground, right? I recruited, trained, and managed over 200 volunteers. I built out what was the most robust internship program in the entire country. People on my manager in DC had me speak about how I'd set up my internship program on nationwide calls with other state directors to sort of share out best practices. We helped grow neighborhood team leaders, develop leadership at every level of the organization so that everyday Americans could really make their voices heard in Washington. And I remember one of my proudest moments was when my boss and I recognized that I, in the little small but mighty state of Rhode Island, the ocean state, had the highest per capita number of phone calls and doors knocked in the midterm elections. So we were a mighty state, a small state, but a mighty state of activists and volunteers who I had grown, really homegrown and focused on growing power from that grassroots level. So you might imagine my surprise when the midterm elections were over and there was some restructuring going on, that I was one of the first state directors to go. I was one of the first state directors to find themselves laid off and out of a job. And frankly, for anyone who's in the DC area or anyone who works in campaigns and elections knows that in that world of politics, you have to get really good at always lining up your next job anyway, because there's a cyclical nature to these things. But as I looked around at directors who'd been laid off versus the state directors who had been given leadership opportunities, I noticed that some of my male colleagues in particular in nearby states like Massachusetts and Connecticut and New Hampshire, even though they had a similar operation, and by some accounts, they were less successful in establishing a really strong organization in their state, they had spent a lot of time nurturing their relationships with people back at headquarters. So with the staff and leaders back in DC. And I thought, well, in order for me to be successful at my job, I have to stay focused on what it is that I'm building here. I'm growing this organization. I'm training, I'm recruiting, I'm managing volunteers, I'm making phone calls, I'm helping produce really powerful grassroots results. But that was an early lesson for me. And I'm not telling you this story for anybody's pity by any means, because getting laid off is no fun, but it happens and it happens to lots of us. But in that moment, as I saw the leaders who had been working on cultivating relationships with the folks back in HQ get promoted, get leadership opportunities, and see the hard work that they had done in their states turn into actual opportunities to lead at higher levels, to influence the organization to a greater extent, I was filled with envy. And I thought to myself, okay, what's the lesson here? Being a high achieving, hardworking individual contributor who is focused exclusively on performance is not enough to get ahead in this world. It is not enough to be seen as having leadership potential, to be given the opportunities to step up and lead at a higher level and to influence your organization at a higher level. How many people can relate to that story here of crossing the T's, dotting the I's, doing your job well, and then time and time again, seeing others who frankly might not share that characteristic or that diligence that you have rising in the ranks? Yeah, I'm seeing folks in chat saying, I can relate, seeing a lot of raised hands. It's a frustrating lesson to learn for sure, but it is why we are here today. The reality is far too many women are being left behind, are being passed over because the excellence that we're focused on bringing to the table is not recognized. The same things that got us good grades in school are not the skills, traits, and characteristics that will enable us to have a lasting, greater impact in this world, in this lifetime. So enough about me. Hopefully you've gotten a sense as to why I feel so strongly about this. Shortly after my experience in politics, I did find another job in DC. I did find an opportunity to still work in politics at the intersection of politics and tech, actually, after my organizing days. But in 2013, so 9 years ago now, I started Bossed Up because I firmly believe that too many of us women are missed as having the leadership potential that we have, of having the influence and the ability to step up and lead both organizations and others, but also just lead ourselves into the future that we want to create for ourselves. So I brought everything that I've learned in the past decade and beyond around self-advocacy, people power and change, and bringing about radical change in your life, in your career, in your community, to start Bossed Up in 2013. And it has been an amazing journey that's culminating in the precipice of being on our 10-year anniversary. Our team is growing faster than ever, and we're doing more high impact work, both with Fortune 500 organizations and teams, and also with incredible individuals. If you've ever taken part in any Bossed Up programs, let me know in chat. I'd love to see what kind of alums we have here. Maybe you've been a part of our Level Up Leadership Accelerator, our Speak Up program, our Bossed Up Bootcamp program, which was sunsetted actually in 2020 due to the pandemic. But we'll bring it back. Hey, Wade. Hey, Jessica, a Bossed Up Bootcamp alum. Hey, Sarah from Speak Up. Hey, Sherilyn. It's so good to see so many familiar names. It is Hired, our job search accelerator. Hannah is here. I'm like already getting preemptively nostalgic for how much we've accomplished in the last 10 years almost. And we're on the precipice here at Bossed Up of some serious growth. We're about to head next week to a team retreat, and really we're taking the long view on things. I'm just I feel like the clouds are parting. The dust is settling a little bit from the last 7 months of very intense motherhood. And I'm just so encouraged and amazed by this community. So enough about me, enough about Bossed Up. Tell me about you. I want to get to know who is here and who's in the room today. So we've got 2 quick poll questions I'm going to ask you to start with. We know you're here because you want to step up and lead, right? We know you're here because you believe in leading like a boss. But I want to ask you, and Kirby, if you would help me, I don't think I have the ability to launch the poll right now. Can you launch that first poll question? I would love to hear, how are you specifically looking to grow, and where are you looking to take your career to that next level? I'm not sure if you're able to do that, Kirby. Are you?
Oops, no, sorry. So it says that because you're logged in from a different device, I can't launch the poll session.
I'm so sorry. Not to worry. Ooh, I clicked ahead a little bit. So here's what we're going to do instead. We've been having a little bit of technical difficulties this morning, so I appreciate everyone's patience. Tell me in chat, how are you specifically looking to grow? I'm going to give you a couple of ideas to start with. What does stepping up and leading like a boss mean to you? Like, where do you see yourself ascending this year? Are you looking for a new job? Are you looking to rise in the ranks at your current organization? Are you angling for a promotion? Let's see, some other ideas. Do you want to clarify your vision, become a better people manager, a better project manager, a better leader in terms of communication, working on executive presence, be seen as a leader at work, or be promoted? Let's see what we've got coming in through chat. Awesome. So many great comments here. Let me read out a few. So leading a remote team successfully. Yes. How to set clear expectations, how to manage remotely. Such a great question. Carrie says, getting that promotion in the open position in my department. Ooh, exciting. Building influence in a highly political organization. Ooh, I can relate. So exciting. New job and continue to coming off mute. New job, continue to come. So speaking up, right? Speaking out. Absolutely. I would like to land a new job with a higher title and more responsibility, be a better coach to my team, says Allie, be a better agile project manager. Totally. Ooh, incorporate leadership into a restructured job role. That can be tricky. Move into a leadership role, new people manager, looking To grow in leading a team for the first time, exciting. Okay, what's holding you back? Let's shift gears into that second question. So Catherine already said, this is my first time doing this. I can relate. That's what parenthood has felt like so far, right? We are all novices at some point. And what's really tricky is that after you're succeeding in your role, excuse me, as an individual contributor for a while, frankly, good, talented, hardworking people sometimes get put into management positions, and all of that confidence that you had in your ability to just crush that to-do list daily or be a really high level individual contributor goes out the window when you're like, oh shoot, how do I manage people and personalities and politics? All of that feels really, really tricky. What else is holding you back? So much good stuff happening here in chat. Figuring out my blind spots, starting in a new industry, doubt in myself. I think so many of us can relate. How about fear? Does anyone have fear holding them back? Not knowing where to go and what to do, second guessing myself, not feeling aligned with the leadership priorities of my organization. Yeah, that can be really tricky. Doubt and lack of support. So I ask you these questions around what's holding you back to first and foremost recognize that you are not alone. Right? Living on your growth edge, stepping into that next phase in your life or career feels really uncomfortable, right? If you were staying in your comfort zone, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be interested in this kind of a conversation, right? If you were content, which is fine to be, by the way, lots of people are fine and content. Contentment is a wonderful thing to strive towards, especially in our careers, but also in our lives. We don't always have to be striving just to chase merit badges or shiny sensations of progress, right? Like there's nothing wrong with contentment, but you're here today because you want to lead like a boss. You want to step up as a leader or more of a leader and be seen as more of a leader. And so many of us, especially as women in a world dominated by men across every industry, the higher you rise, the more men you see, the fewer women you see in terms of leadership. This stuff is tricky. This is nuanced. And what's really interesting, the sort of the zoomed in area where Bossed Up is really focusing right now is that first step into promotion, that first step into management. That first promotion from individual contributor to manager predominantly goes to men. This is known as the broken rung in leadership. Back in 2019, Lean In and McKinsey and Company discovered that even though there's been a lot of progress made at the C-suite and the higher levels of management, so upper management, we've seen a lot of gains when it comes to women's representation. That first step into the first management position, more often than not, goes to a very male and very pale population. So if you look at these numbers, for every 100 men who were promoted into management for the first time, only 72 women are promoted. And the numbers get even worse for women of color. If women, another way of putting this, I think is really helpful. If women were promoted and hired to first level manager positions at the same rates of men, we would add 1 million more women to management in the next 5 years. So imagine what 1 million more women in management could do for your organization or for your community or for the world. Now, I think it's fair to say things have gotten even worse since the pandemic. I've been doing a lot of work with LinkedIn, specifically around on-ramping women back into the workforce after 2020. So many parents, regardless of gender, had to make really impossible decisions around virtual schooling and childcare being completely unstable during a global health crisis, and filling in those needs versus being able to contribute professionally in the paid workforce. That it really has impacted the gender equity in every single rank in the workforce. But what's interesting is even as women do start to come back, for those who have stepped out of the paid workforce for a while, they're not getting those equal opportunities to manager positions. And I do worry, frankly, of the long-term ramifications of what 2020 and beyond has in store for gender equity. Hannah says a lot of my female colleagues are the ones bearing the brunt of the great resignation too, as our team dwindles. Yeah, I could go on a whole tangent about the Great Resignation. Is it real? Is it a reshuffle? Is it by choice? Is it by financial need? I'll have to tweet about that sometime, but the jury's still out, right? The moral of the story is, Annette says, the resignation is real. I agree completely. It's clear that there's a lot of churn. And in fact, I think more people are looking than ever before because there's a growing recognition of the power of labor, right? The labor organizer in me is doing backflips over the Great Resignation because people recognize that companies can't operate without them. Companies are having to cough up serious coin to retain and develop their leaders. So if organizations aren't making it worth your while to stay, people are looking, people are leaving, people are acting, and I think that's a great thing. The companies that will succeed in this environment are the companies that prove to their staff every day that their labor and their power is recognized, is important, and that their holistic personhood matters at work. That's my mini tangent. The moral of the story here is a lot of organizations that we're working with want to develop women leaders. They recognize that this is a problem in their organization. Not only is it a problem that women aren't getting equal opportunity, but specifically women of color, Black women in particular, are not getting the recognition and the support from middle managers. And managers can make all the difference in the world, right? Managers can make a huge difference. So if you are a current people manager, or if you aspire to be a people manager, there is great power and great responsibility that comes with being the person that folks go to every day, with being the person who should provide cover and clarity and camaraderie to your team, right? There's a lot of power that you have to make someone's life significantly better or significantly worse when you are their manager. And what McKinsey and Company and Lean In found is that this is kind of a complex chart. So I'm going to leave it up here for a hot minute so you can really take a look. But the overall sense of support that folks have from their manager continues to be lacking for Black women in particular. Not as bad for white women, which is interesting, who are the most likely to report that their managers help them navigate organizational politics or advocate for them for new opportunities. But I want you to think about these questions as it relates to yourself, right? I would also note that nobody here is having that great of a time when it comes to their work, when it comes to their manager. Like, none of these numbers are above 50%, and that's a little sad. So we have room to improve. How many people, whether it's you or someone else at work, get promoted into management with no training at all? No training about what it means to be a people manager, how to be a great people manager, how to set other people up for success, no business school degree. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot in chat. None, almost every time. Yes, that happened to me. No training. I've seen it and I've watched them fail. Yes, very little training. Yeah. So, oh, Annette saying no, a lot of training, I think. Nope on the training, barely any, even on approving timesheets. Yeah. So there's sort of a lack, I would say an oversight when it comes to training and development for that first level manager. So whether you are a current manager, a middle manager right now, a first time manager, or an aspiring manager, not a lot of people are setting our first time managers up for success. And that's doubly true for women who already have a lot of different office politics to navigate and have a lot on their plate when it comes to navigating the institutional biases and structural disparities that women are up against every single day. So you would think that there would be lots of different organizations, lots of different resources, but it's very much a DIY game. It is a sort of like a systemic oversight whereby managers, regardless of gender, are not often set up to succeed in leading others. And women managers in particular are not even given equal opportunity to step into those roles for the first time. So what do we do about this, right? What do we do to change this? Bossed Up has really been focusing in the last 2 years in particular on how we can help this very specific population. And it turns out a lot of organizations who we've now partnered with are also very interested in solving for the broken rung in gender gaps in leadership. They're saying, well, how do we retain women? Because they're hardworking, they're super talented. We know diversity, equity, and inclusion is important, but How do we set them up for success instead of just throwing them into the deep end where they have to DIY it? And for the women who are thrown into the deep end or are finding themselves sort of floating, being the only person who, wow, I'm really, really going for this metaphor. I don't think I'm going to land this plane to mix metaphors, but if you're the one who's seeking out resources yourself, who's looking for support, who's trying to figure this out because you've been given no support or training or haven't been set up for success, it can feel like the following. It might feel like I'm being passed over for promotions. Like I see my male colleagues around me getting put into leadership positions when I feel like I'm frankly doing a better job, performing at a higher level, but I'm just not being given those opportunities. Like the women in this chart said, I don't have the sponsorship that I need to advance in my career, right? I don't have opportunities to showcase my work. I don't have opportunities to manage people and projects given to me by my manager. So I'm feeling passed over. Or maybe it feels like I just don't see, or I'm not sure that I see a future for myself here. If there's no one in management or middle management or upper management who really reflects my identity or my values, I'm not sure this is the place for me. And so it's perfectly reasonable that that desire for progress manifests in dusting off your resume and looking elsewhere. Or all of my hard work, all of my attention to detail, all of my precision is not appreciated. It's not what's getting me on the path to a promotion, just like organizer Emilie, doing a really good job being a grassroots organizer, but not doing a good job advocating for myself. And finally, one of the other most common challenges I hear from folks is my hard work is just rewarded with more work. Do any of these speak to you? Does this resonate with you at all? I'd be curious to hear from you in chat if it does, because if so, you're in the right place. You're not alone, right? You are not alone if you feel unclear about how to advocate for the opportunities to step up and manage a team or lead a team like a boss. Wow. Yeah. The more work equals more work. Yeah, all of the above, ouch. So this is what we're here to solve for. At Bossed Up, this has become the specific pain point, the specific inflection point in women's careers where we want to be the most impactful, where we want to accelerate your success and really equip you with the tools and tactics that can help you get from this feeling to feeling like, yeah, I am not only the boss at work, but I am the boss of my career and life. And so lately here at Bossed Up, we've been digging into this saying that I've been saying for 10 years now, right? The system is not designed for us. The system is not set up for us, especially as aspiring women leaders or as women leaders, period. I always have said we have to play the cards that we've been dealt while we change the game, meaning the world is not fair. We are all operating against systemic forms of biases, oppression, injustice at every step of the way. And for women living at the intersection of being or the intersection of race and class, or gender and ability, or neurodivergent folks in the workplace, that intersecting forms of bias can really hold you back and really make it feel like this place is just not where you will be able to achieve your full potential. But I'm here to say that we can acknowledge those systemic challenges and own our power and equip ourselves as best we can to soldier on, right? To proceed full speed ahead, to advocate for ourselves with the same effort and energy that we advocate for our loved ones, our children, our team members. And so at Bossed Up, what we've been doing the past 2 years in particular with our Level Up Leadership Accelerator is equipping women month by month, skill set by skill set, with the tools and tactics that you need to step up and lead teams and lead like a boss. So we'll tell you more about it. If you want to learn more about Level Up, stick around towards the end. Today, I will absolutely invite you to participate in one of our upcoming cohorts. We're launching a public cohort, meaning anyone from any industry and any organization can enroll in our 6-month leadership accelerator starting in July or starting in September while space lasts. Things are filling up quickly this year already. It's kind of a crazy time. at Bossed Up, we're trying to scale up to really meet this newfound demand that the last 2 years has brought about for these kinds of programs. But also at Bossed Up, Kirby on the line, our sales and marketing director, Kirby and I have been talking with tons of teams, organizations from institutions of higher education and medical schools to hospitals and medicine to tech companies to retail businesses nationwide and globally who are really interested in helping or in teaming up with us to deliver a custom version of Level Up specifically for their team and specifically for the women in their organization who they've identified as high potential leaders that they want to equip to step into those management roles for the first time with the tools and tactics that they need to get there. And interestingly, we're also working with plenty of teams across gender. So all of those leadership skills are important for all people, regardless of gender, to have if they're going to lead people and teams. So I'm really excited about, I'm a little overwhelmed by, frankly, the organizations that have come to Bossed Up in the last year in particular to launch Level Up accelerators. If that's of interest for you or your staff or your team, or you just want to explore what that might look like, definitely set up a call with Kirby, who's here in chat. Maybe you can drop your link in chat, Kirby, for those who want to talk more. Anyway, I'm not here to talk more about this right now. I want to dive into a few key lessons from our Level Up Leadership Accelerator to give you a sense of what we cover in the program, and to also make sure that you leave here today with tools and tactics and really some frameworks that you can begin to apply to your practice of leadership right now. Because the women who come to Bossed Up, the women who enroll in our Level Up Leadership Accelerator, they already have the work ethic, the ambition, the drive to lead like a boss. All we do is provide the framework and the community and the training to help evolve and sort of translate those skills to a world and a workplace that needs to see your leadership potential loud and clear, or hear it loud and clear. So first and foremost, one of my favorite mindset shifts, one of my favorite frameworks that I think is just so fundamental to stepping up and being seen as the leader you are, is to really understand the difference between being a manager versus being a leader. What is the difference between being a manager versus being a leader? We use these terms pretty interchangeably. I do it. I've probably used them interchangeably here today. So I'd be curious to hear from you in chat, and there's so much good stuff happening in chat. I won't be able to address it all today, but what do you think the difference is between being a manager versus being a leader? Interesting. Cool. A difference in scale. Yep. Have I stumped y'all? It's kind of a tricky one. Connection with your staff. You don't need a title to be a leader. Interesting. I could talk about leadership is not derived from authority all day. That's another favorite topic of mine. Whoa. Manager helps with your work. A leader inspires your work. Leaders work alongside. Delegation versus inspiration. Ooh, Megan's kind of touching on it here. Taking care of details is managing. Geraldine's really touching on it here too. She says leaders bring a vision and galvanize others around it. Now, let me first acknowledge that both being a great manager and being a great leader are important. Most of us have to do both. I don't know if you can hear my neighbor's leaf blower that's decided to start right now. How fun for all of us. Most of us have to do both, right? Most of us are not full-time leaders who can just, spit off some ideas on a boardroom call every now and then and sit back and let everyone else do the work, right? Most of us are juggling both management and leadership as part of our roles, regardless of title, regardless of authority, and both are important. Both of these things are good. Neither one is bad or better than the other, but they are fundamentally different in terms of where they focus. So I think I just spoke to what you said here, Caroline, in chat, which is hopefully coming through loud and clear, because Caroline makes a really good point that sometimes leaders are seen as better than. The reality is both are important. Managers and leaders serve a critical function, and frankly, most of us have to do both. But when we are being managers, we're focusing on administering tasks or administering programs. When we're focusing on leading and wearing our leader hat, we're innovating. We're asking what should be done here. Instead of just crossing off the items on the to-do list, we think, what should be on the to-do list to begin with? What should be off this to-do list? We question how things are being done because leaders are focused on innovation and process improvement and continuous learning. Managers are task focused. Who here delights in that ding that comes with an Asana checkbox checked or a Todoist app to-do list crossed off, or just love crossing things off a to-do list? I, for one, the Virgo in me is screaming loud and clear, love the little dopamine hit that I get when I can say, done, project done, task done. Managers tend to be task focused. We wake up and say, well, what do I need to get done today? Right? That is the manager hat that we're wearing in that moment. The leader hat, when I'm wearing that leader hat, I wake up and think, who do I need to connect with today? Who do I need to equip today? Who do I need to set up for success today? As Kirby prepares for a direct report who we just hired for her, who's coming in a week from today, her entire week basically looks like, what do I need to do to set my new direct report up for success a week from today? That's our whole week, which the to-do list slayer in us is like cringing because we're like, but I have so many cool people I want to talk to. I have so many things I want to cross off my to-do list. Managers are focused on delegating to subordinates, right? Who is someone that can take something off my plate? And maybe you don't use the word subordinate because I think it can be a little derogatory, but you think, who is here to support this project? How can I get this off my plate and onto theirs? Leaders inspire followers. That's different than direct reports. That's different than subordinates, right? Leaders, a true sign of leadership is when someone leaves an organization and they take a whole bunch of people with them. Have you ever seen that happen? When senior leaders depart from an organization, maybe to start their own thing or to go to a different company, the people who follow them to the ends of the earth are inspired by their leadership and the trust and faith that that person has instilled in them. That is a sign of leadership. Managers focus on doing things right. They cross the T's, they dot the I's, they do things by the book, they make sure things are done with excellence. And thank God for managers who focus on that, because that is really important work. And that is what enables those nutty professor type leaders out there to just say, well, let me just brainstorm here. I'm more of an ideas guy. I'm not really bogged down in the how. We're going to make it happen, but we're going to put a man on the moon, right? The leaders who are focused on what's doing the right thing, what's the big picture here, what should we be doing here, are less concerned with the details. Does that bug anybody here, by the way? Anyone have a leader who just constantly brainstorms ideas without ever thinking about the ramifications that has on the actual people who have to get those ideas done or get them off the ground? They're both important, right? Managers almost lean more towards their head, the rational thinking, the to-do list, the planning, the orders and operations kind of part of our head. And leaders lean into our hearts, our relationships. What's the right thing to do here? What's the ethics that drive us forward? What's the purpose behind what we do? Both are important. We need our heads and our hearts engaged to step up and lead teams. But what's tricky here is that women in particular tend to struggle with a lot of the items on the right side of this list. So who here would say, just by a show of hands, that you are more inclined towards the left side of this list? The management part of your brain is more engaged in your day-to-day work. Got some hands raised. Excellent. Day-to-day, yeah. Okay. Awesome. That is not unusual. Who here wants to balance both a little more, right? Who here is interested in flexing the things on the right side of the column a little more? A lot of folks share that value. That's why we're here today, right? Herminia Ibarra and Otilia Obudaru, some of my favorite researchers, they studied they did a longitudinal study. It's a little bit dated now, but it was a long-term study looking at 360-degree reviews of all kinds of managers and leaders in organizations, Fortune 500 organizations at that middle manager level. So they looked at the 360-degree reviews, meaning their boss's feedback for them, their peers' feedback for them, and their team's feedback for them, and studied the differences that emerged when they looked at gender here. So yeah, and you can totally have a hybrid, Emilie, of these two things. I think we tend to lean one way or the other, and environment, by the way, shapes more than anything how you're inclined to lead here. But back to this longitudinal study, they studied the differences between how people evaluated women managers versus how they evaluated men managers. And surprising no one, women managers were rated on the whole as at a higher level than their male counterparts on every single leadership characteristic, except for one. The one area that women were found to be lacking was visioning, cultivating and communicating a leadership vision. I want to give you an example from my past life of politics of what that tends to look like, right? Because some of us lean more towards the manager side of us, and some of us lean more toward the visionary leader side of us. And both, again, are important, but here's a clear example of the difference between the two. Perhaps you remember that these two fine folks ran for president, some of them a few times. And back in 2007, if you can remember that far back, these two were head to head in a very drawn out Democratic primary contest to see who would be on the ticket on the ballot in November to become president of the United States. I think we all know how it worked out. But at the time, these two candidates were demonstrating very different leadership styles, very different approaches. One of them, Hillary Rodham Clinton here on the left, led with her plans. She said, look, I've done the work. I have experience. I have education. I've got teams set up. I've got detailed plans on my website showing you exactly what I would do. In other words, I've done my homework. How many people show up to meetings like that at work, where you've done your homework, you've done the research, you've looked at the data, you've come ready to present your argument and make your case. And then someone else comes in having done really no preparation at all for that meeting and just says, what if we go back to the drawing board completely? What do y'all think about this? Wouldn't that be amazing? And they paint a picture of a totally different direction than the project you had originally intended to go in. And everyone goes, yes, that would be so cool. That would be so awesome. I'm so on board with that. Now, they might not have done their homework. They might not bring all the experience and research diligence to the table, but they inspire others to follow where they're headed. They paint a clear picture of a vision that describes, in some ways, the leadership that we saw on the campaign trail from this gentleman here on the right, former president now, Barack Obama, who's ran his campaign on two words, right? What were those two words? Anyone remember what the 2008 campaign really boiled down to? Who can recall? It's been a long time now. Oh, there's a couple here. Hope and change. Hope and change, baby. Absolutely. I like that. We've got some yes, we can, some si se puede up in here. That's great. Yes, we can, or hope and change. Very clear picture of what it is that we're aiming for. But is it clear? Or does that mean really different things to different people, right? Barack Obama was a one-term senator at the time. He had very little experience at the time, but what he did have was the leadership characteristics to inspire followers, to aspire to do the right thing, right? To lead towards hope and change, less focused on the how, on the plans, on the experience, on the doing of the homework and saying, here's my rational case for this, but we all know how this worked out, right? Time and again, I see this approach replicated in organizations across the world, truly. Women come to the table having done their homework, having come up with a detail-oriented plan, having crossed the T's and dotted the I's, and men say, put me in, coach, I can do this. Let me paint a picture for you of what would happen if you give me this opportunity. And time and again, people are inspired to lead visionary or to follow visionary leaders. So why is this the case? Well, Herminia Ibarra and Otilia Obudaru looked into why women managers and leaders were less inclined to exercise vision skills and less likely to have a clear and compelling vision. Theory one was that women are equally visionary, but they share credit. Men say, look, I'm Steve Jobs. I've got a groundbreaking idea that's going to change the way that the world works, right? It's going to step into the spotlight with a black turtleneck and a Britney Spears mic going and say, here's my great idea. Women leaders say, okay, team, this is your idea, run with it. Women leaders say, we came up with this great idea. So they share change. Theory two is that women can't just shoot from the hip. Do you know how hard they work to get here into a leadership position? They can't be willing to just willy-nilly say, what if we try this totally out of the box idea? What if they fail? The research shows there's a phenomenon known as the glass cliff, similar but different from the glass ceiling. The glass ceiling is sort of representative of how hard it is to get into those leadership positions. The glass cliff is representative of how easy it is to lose those leadership opportunities if you try something outside the box and it fails. Women's failures tend to be seen as more detrimental to their career overall. And theory three is that women just don't care to be that visionary because that's not as important to them. They don't care about being in the spotlight. They're more inclined to set up the team for success, to be servant leaders, to make sure everyone is taken care of. And so, whichever of these theories, or perhaps all three, speak to you, the bottom line here is that vision is important for being seen as the leader that you are. So how do we go about cultivating and communicating leadership vision if right now we're focused on crossing the T's, dotting the I's, and managing the day-to-day? Well, a couple of key tactics that are just a small portion of what we talk about in Level Up. The first, I alluded to the fact that my team and I are about to go on a team retreat. I would say it's long overdue. When's the last time you made time to step out of the day-to-day, to step out of the hamster wheel and evaluate what it is that you're doing? Ask, why are we doing things the way we're doing things? How might we do things better? What should we be aiming for, as opposed to just getting in, slaying that to-do list, getting through that inbox and clocking out, right? Making time for visioning is not easy to do, whether you do it as a brainstorm, as an offsite, as a SWOT analysis, which is a really helpful tactic that we walk through in the Level Up program. Engaging your team in working on building the engine of the airplane that you're flying, not just flying it every day, is such an important thing that we have to make more time for. From there, I always say we have to give ourselves freedom to extrapolate, meaning inspiration is everywhere. We need to be looking outside of ourselves, outside of our teams. Young Emilie, Aries, the young state director in Rhode Island, needed to be looking outside of the state. What are other people doing? What were my counterparts in New Hampshire and Massachusetts doing? And Connecticut, how could I have learned from them better? What are my peers and senior leaders in DC doing? How could I establish relationships with them and learn from them so I can bring those lessons home? Maybe you're reading the newspaper, maybe you're listening to podcasts. How can I take inspiration from all around me so I can extrapolate that from that and bring that with me to work and say, one of our Level Up leaders was positioning herself for a promotion, was basically making a big presentation to her boss's boss, saying, if given the opportunity, here's what I would do if I was able to take this national campaign global on behalf of my company, if you give me this promotion. And she showed me her presentation. We worked on it together as part of our executive coaching in the Level Up program. And I said, this is a good start, but all of your references are internal. Everything you're telling me here is about how your company has done things in the past. I need you to look outside of your company. And she said, yeah, but that's beyond the scope of what I was asked to do. And I said, yeah, I know. That's part of it. That's the point. No one's going to ask you to do this. I'm going to ask you to do it, but very few people at work are going to ask you to do this. And she said, all right, I think you're a little crazy, Emilie, but I'm going to go with it. Let me see what I can find out. So in her presentation to her boss's boss, she brought in a competitive analysis of what other industry leaders in their sector were doing and how she has drawn inspiration from it. I think we should be doing more of what they're doing. I think what they're doing over here is kind of crazy, and I don't think we should be doing that. But perhaps we could take a little bit of this inspiration and kind of bring that into this element here. Look at the macro trends and how it influences what we're doing here. She looked beyond the scope of her organization. This last bullet point here, she thought about her organization's position in their market, not just her position within the overall organization. And her boss's boss's boss was knocked aback, like was totally knocked off her seat, was completely impressed with the leadership vision that this person was bringing to the table, right? The outside perspectives that she had incorporated. I am recognizing what the time is right now, and I'm definitely going to go over the top of the hour, so I'll try to be more concise. But if you can't tell, I'm super excited and passionate about all of this stuff, and I could talk about this all day. Frankly, I could talk about this for 6 months, which is what we do in Level Up. But my last piece of advice here for how to be more visionary at work is to do what she did, do what that client of mine did, right? Cultivating relationships both inside and outside of your organization enables you to bring more creative ideas to work and be more inspiring and visionary in evaluating, what should we be doing? If it were up to me, how would I lead my team moving ahead, whether I'm in that position right now or not? Those expressions of vision, that ability to communicate where you think you should be headed next, even if no one's asked you to think about that, gets translated as being a visionary leader, gets seen and gets you seen as the leader that you are. And the final element that makes all of this all the more tricky for women leaders in particular is how to balance warmth and competence. How many people have struggled with this before? The leadership likability double bind. I've been talking about the stats since Vostok started in 2013. And the research time and time again for decades now has shown that both men and women deem assertive women or leader-like women who are being assertive, who are sharing their ideas, who are being forthright about their vision, as less likable. It is confounding. It is demoralizing. It is frustrating. It leaves us feeling like we're tap dancing on a tightrope. We want to be liked because, let's be clear, likability does in fact matter at work. We don't operate in a perfect meritocracy. We want to be taken seriously as the leaders that we are, as the high level contributors that we are, but we also want to be, seen as a nice person to hang out with and a good team player. And this is so challenging in how we communicate. Hannah says this gets compounded over Slack. Yes, absolutely. Our Speak Up course on assertive communication goes into detail on that. But this all boils down to a very universal model that I talk a little bit about in Level Up and always comes up on my coaching calls with clients. The model is called the warmth competence model. And all human beings, regardless of gender, regardless of anything, are evolutionarily designed to make two immediate judgments when evaluating someone, whether that's someone walking down the street, a stranger that we're about to walk past on the sidewalk, or a colleague at work who might be, saying something that we're interpreting as passive aggressive over Slack, let's say. Those two universal judgments are: one, what are this person's intentions toward me, right? The likability factor. Do they want to help or harm? Are they a threat, friend, or foe? That's really the first judgment we make, whether we're walking up by a stranger on the street or we're thinking about that passive aggressive comment someone put on Slack. Friend or foe? Are they angling for my job or they want to support me? And then two, how capable of acting on their intentions are they? Do they even have what it takes to make good on their threats if they're threatening, right? I like to boil this down in this little chart that I made here that kind of makes me chuckle, quite frankly. The warmth competence model, again, this is a universal human phenomenon because we're evolutionarily designed to judge people this way, looks at, okay, if you have high warmth towards me, that means you're friendly. So I'm going to judge this person as friendly. Maybe this is my colleague who is friendly, but perhaps I deem her as having low competence, not very good at what she does. I actually had a version of this chart with all Office characters from The Office because I'm obsessed with that show. If you know, you know. And this would be oh God, now I want to call her Kimmy Schmidt. What's that character's name in The Office? Not Pam, but the second receptionist. Oh, someone's got to help me out here. Not Angela. Erin, thank you. Yes, Erin, of course. Not Kimmy Schmidt, same actress. Erin would be deemed high warmth, low competence, right? She's the golden retriever of the office, super friendly, non-threatening, but also probably doesn't have what it takes to be a leader. People are going to judge her as not having what it takes to run the office. By the way, the office, we could talk about, I think we should have a feminist podcast about a feminist take on the office and talk about gender roles in the office. That would be like, I would listen to that podcast. I would also like to be on that podcast. So somebody call me and let's make that happen. But if you're friendly, you've got high warmth and high competence. This is the Bill Nye character, right? This is the Jim from The Office character. High warmth, high competence. We trust them to get the job done well, but we also trust they're going to watch our back. They're going to take care of their teams. They're going to be a good boss to work for. Low competence and low warmth breeds pity or cute frustration, right? This is a person who is not happy with us. They are frustrated. This would be Angela from The Office, right? Low warmth, but also non-threatening. Angela is not going to be able to do any real damage, just like a toddler having a tantrum can't actually truly bring too much harm to me, although that's debatable. I'm sure my mom's in the room would argue with me on that point. But if you're deemed as having low warmth, being not so friendly, but also not so competent, you're also going to get passed over for those leadership opportunities. If you're deemed as low warmth, but high competence, you fall into the evil genius category here. This is the person who is not trusted, who breeds distrust and dishonesty, and we feel like threatened by. This is a toxic manager in a toxic workplace who is deemed as good at their job. So what if they're an asshole? They'll get promoted because they're good at what they do. And they just basically are given a free pass to be a total and complete jerk. This unfortunately still leads to promotions, mostly for men, mind you, not so much for women. But when we have to think about where the data falls on warmth versus competence, knowing that this being competence, the higher competence you bring to the table as a leader, the less likable you're deemed, it leaves us as women leaders in a bit of a double bind. Amy Cuddy, who is the researcher best known for her work on power poses, first studied the warmth competence model and how it relates to women's leadership. And what she found, along with her colleagues, is that regardless of gender, if you are angling to be put in a position to lead others, it is a critical error to put competence before warmth. To relate it back to my own personal experience, I was so focused as a state director in Rhode Island on being extremely competent in my state, doing my job extremely well, performing at a high level. I didn't think to prioritize warmth. I didn't think to prioritize relationships. Frankly, oh, did I jump over Janelle? That's a fun story, but we don't have time for it. Janelle is awesome. The end. That's the short version of that story, right? I didn't think to be people focused. I was so busy digging out of my to-do list every day. So I didn't think to prioritize warmth because I was so focused on competence. Who here can relate to that? Hillary says 100%. Every bit of research shows it is the mistake to proceed in that order. It's not that either of those are not important. They're both important, but the order is really salient here. If you are a woman aspiring to lead, really, if you're anyone aspiring to lead teams effectively, you have to prioritize warmth first, kindness, relationship building, people equipping, people orientation first, competence second. Thinking like a leader first, thinking like a manager second. I used to roll my eyes at quotes like this from Dr. Wayne Dyer. If you have the choice between being right or being kind, choose kind. I used to think to myself, yeah, that's for people who aren't so busy, or that's for people who aren't so, who don't have such high pressure jobs. Mistake, huge mistake. Some of you probably have known this well longer than I have. Kindness is a long-term strategy for career success. Now, it can also backfire if it's not matched with advocacy and self-advocacy and assertiveness and competence, but that is the balance that we have to bring to the table. That is how we can equip ourselves to be seen as the leaders that we are, or that we can be. I've given you a couple of key concepts to think about today. I've given you a rundown of the difference between leadership and management, or being a leader and being a manager. We've talked a little bit about the importance of cultivating and communicating leadership vision, how tricky that can be. We've talked about the warmth competence model. Obviously, I could geek out all day about the social science that's holding us as women back. But my question for you is this: all of the theory and all of the science in the world doesn't matter if you can't apply it. Here at Bossed Up, we're very focused on being instantly applicable and tactical and practical with our training. So here's my question to you: what's one way you're going to apply what you've learned today to your work, to your career, to your advancement, or to your teams? What is one way you want to challenge yourself to act on what you've learned here? In our Level Up Leadership Accelerator, we have a workshop every single month. It's 90 minutes long. We really dig into things. We have interactive breakouts. And then every single month, about a week or two later, we have an accountability call. That accountability call is where we prompt you in the weeks between the workshop and the accountability call with, how are you going to apply this? What is your homework? What are you doing differently in your practice of leadership? And then come back to that accountability call and let's talk it out. Let's practice it. Let's troubleshoot it. Let's share what's working, what's not, what's challenging you, right? Because that's what makes a difference in our programs. It's not the theory, it's the application. It's the being in a community of other women, especially women across industries, and sharing, cross-pollinating ideas for how to apply these lessons to your life. Carrie says, I'm going to build those relationships. Nikki says, my last female boss was low warmth and high competence, and it was wild to see how long she's been in the industry and been successful. Yeah, that is not surprising. I think a lot of people, regardless of gender, get in those positions, but their people don't stick around. People don't work for those people for very long. You clearly aren't there anywhere because you left, right? People do not follow those kinds of leaders. Lauren says, I want to practice visioning. Hannah says, I want to work to keep relationships with folks that leave. Yes, fostering career relationships outside of your current workplace. Rain says, setting aside visioning time and trying to be consistent in guarding it isn't that tricky. Looking outside the organization more when visioning, working on becoming a visionary and continuing to work on the relationships in my group. Jane says, I'm going to think hard about the cards I have and how to change the game. Absolutely. There's so much here. +1 on visioning. I love what you're sharing here today. If you found this community, this space, this camaraderie impactful for you today, if you recognized yourself in a lot of the comments coming in here in chat, that's not nothing, right? That is not a coincidence. Here at Bossed Up, I'm a community organizer at my core. That's what we do at Bossed Up. And I remember reading this line in 2013, the year I started Bossed Up. The Harvard Business Review had an amazing cover article on the invisible barriers that women leaders face at work. And there was this line that said, women leaders need a safe identity workspace for a supportive transition into leadership roles. That is the transition, that is the window of opportunity that we at Bossed Up are obsessed with, that I am personally obsessed with accelerating for women everywhere. And this community at Bossed Up, whether it's right here in chat, or if you do choose to join us for any of our upcoming leadership programs, that's what makes this so impactful. That is what makes this a really, like, a community that's way bigger than any one person, certainly bigger than me. Rain says, just a shameless plug for the Bossed Up's yearly planner. This has been an awesome tool for setting goals like these and in keeping myself accountable. Thank you, Rain. That makes my heart sing. Kirby, I don't know if you want to drop a link to our planners for anyone who is late to the Bossed Up planner game. They're still on sale, I believe, and we have just a couple more to ship out from HQ. So here's what we're going to do. I want to leave you with a clear sense of what comes next. If you found today helpful and you want to work with me more, if you want to hang out and be part of the Bossed Up inner circle, this is the best way to do it, okay? Level Up is our 6-month leadership accelerator for women who want to hone management and leadership skills. We started it almost 2 years ago, back in May of 2020. It's sold out right away, and it has taken our business in a whole different direction ever since. Granted, I shouldn't say that we've only been doing this for 2 years, because we've been doing a lot of this leadership training for 10 years almost with Bossed Up Bootcamp, so a former iteration of this program. But the reason that Level Up is so impactful is because you create a system and a community of accountability. So we're going to help all of our participants in Level Up lead, communicate, manage, balance work and life, network with one another, connect with one another, and plan, right? Be better strategic planners and visionary leaders over the course of 6 months. We've got monthly 90-minute workshops, monthly 60-minute accountability calls that I described earlier, where you say, okay, how did you apply this month's lesson on vision and strategic planning? How is writing your strategic plan going? We share, we troubleshoot, we share best practices. It's amazing to see how much learning happens peer-to-peer. You get that community of support, and on top of it, you get one-on-one access to executive coaching calls, either with yours truly or with our amazing team of Level Up trainers. These are just some of our featured Level Up trainers. Our trainer team is growing. You'll see more on that if you're a subscriber to the Bossed Up email list, which all of you now are if you weren't already. But as Bossed Up continues to grow and serve more organizations who are customizing Level Up for their organization, we are actively recruiting and training trainers who have expertise in leadership development and want to work with us, because it's how we are going to be able to meet the demand, which is awesome and exciting. And we've been working with some of these women for a decade now, so that's pretty cool. Here's what's covered over the course of 6 months. We talk about visioning and strategic planning in month 1, time management for both yourself and your team, how to be a better time management teacher, not just a time management whiz yourself, people management and delegation, including how to manage virtual teams. How do you set up clear expectations for your direct reports, and really bringing some business school philosophies and business school principles to that conversation around equipping your team for success. Be heard and make an impact is all about speaking up assertively. We spend 1 month really talking about assertive communication and executive presence. That is such an important topic to me. At Bossed Up, we also have an entire 8-week assertive communication accelerator called Speak Up. If anyone's interested in that, I can tell you more about that. Maybe Kirby, you want to drop a Speak Up link in chat for those interested in really honing in there. Be a Better Boss is all about emotional intelligence and radical candor. It's really honestly about having the tough conversations and creating psychological safety for teams in a really tough world, because we've been living through a tough time, and this world is not an easy place to be in right now, or possibly ever. And then be a mentor and mentee. You know what? Actually, this is out of date. This used to be what we offer in month 6, but now if you go to our landing page, we've changed the mentorship month to something focused on self-advocacy. It's called How to, make a career advancement plan, or how to advocate for career advancement. I think that's what it's called. It's all about self-promotion. It's all about taking everything you've learned in Bossed Up, or in Level Up rather, and turning that into a promotion plan for yourself, and really being mindful about how you think about your next steps, whether they're internal or external. Now, we've got public cohorts starting for Level Up in July and September. Some seats have already been sold, so they're going fast. But this stuff takes time, because we want to equip you with everything you need to get your organization to invest in women's leadership, to get your organization to invest in you. So if you head to our website, I think Kirby dropped a link here, or will soon, on the bossedup.org/levelup landing page. You'll see that we have a whole packet of materials to help you make the case to your team, your HR team, your boss, your manager, as to why you should take Level Up, and why, frankly, they should cover the cost. We've had so many people find success using these persuasive materials that oftentimes their bosses go, well, wait, what is this exactly? Can I join, or can I join a future cohort? Because I want you to tell me everything you're learning. I want you to present to the team at the end of your 6 months. I want you to, tell me what's going on in terms of making an impact for you, so that you can bring your key learnings back, or maybe I can join after all. I can't tell you how many women I've heard from in Level Up take what they learn from this program, bring it back to their bosses, and then land leadership opportunities because simply they shift the way that they're showing up at work. One story I'll quickly share is I can't remember her name. I think it was Kate. She was filling in. She sort of had an interim leadership position while her boss was on maternity leave. And when her boss returned from maternity leave, obviously her role shifted back to what she was doing previously. But her boss said, something's different. What are you doing differently? Like, what is it about you? What's going on with you? Like, something has drastically shifted in how you are showing up as a boss at work. And Kate credits the program, credits Level Up for shifting how she was showing up at work to the point where her boss noticed, even though she didn't know that she had taken part in the Level Up Leadership Accelerator. I hear stories like that time and time again. Becca, who's a nonprofit leader and a fundraising manager, she was an emerging leader, did not have direct reports, was basically doing the job of like 2 or 3 full-time employees. Went through Bossed Up for a few months. She wasn't even through the program when she brought a strategic plan with her new outlined vision for how her nonprofit was expanding from a statewide organization to a national organization, and said, look, if I would be properly resourced, if it were completely up to me, here's how I would shift our fundraising focus. I would hire someone full-time who I would manage and show the ropes to when it comes to event planning. She would do all of our fundraising events. I would be her boss. She would be focusing 100% on making sure that the annual gala is impeccable and that the events leading up to it are done with perfectly manage the entire process. And then I would focus on cultivating the relationships for high dollar donations, grant writing, maybe managing a part-time grant writer too. Her boss took one look at that proposal, at that strategic plan that she had worked within Level Up to come up with. And within the 6 months of the program, Becca got a promotion and got a direct report for her first time. So she didn't get promoted up. She got promoted by getting support via the direct hire of someone beneath her. So it's kind of, I have so many stories like this that I could go on and tell you about, which I frankly was supposed to do earlier in this workshop, but I've forgotten to do until this very moment. But I'm just so passionate about these programs because whether we're teaming up with organizations to customize our curriculum and specifically meet the needs of their managers or their women's ERG or their high potential women emerging leaders, or it's through our public cohorts, we see so many success stories of women who feel better equipped and set up for success and are able to set up others for success as well. Kirby, did you want to add something? I saw you came up from mute. Kirby's like, no, hell no, I'm definitely muted. Okay. All right, I'm going to wrap this up because I'm 15 minutes past the hour, but hopefully you know that means I could do this all day. Oh, I do get to do this all day. If you want to learn more about joining us for Level Up, spaces are going fast, space is limited. Our next public cohorts start in July and September. You can talk to Kirby and hop on a call with a member of our team right here, Kirby, who knows our programs inside out, to see if Level Up is the right program for you. Maybe there's another program we can point you to that might be a better fit, whether it's one that we run or not. We are very candid with our clients and community members about that. And if you're here because you're part of an organization who wants to learn more about, okay, what would it look like to bring Bossed Up in as a partner and to collaborate and customize this program at every single level to really meet the needs of your specific team of managers or aspiring managers or your women's ERG, whether we're talking about managers who are men or women, we've worked across the gender spectrum quite a bit this year and last year now. We are always happy to be co-collaborators, co-conspirators is what I was about to say, but really be co-creators in a solution for that problem of the broken rung. I'm interested in my lifetime. That's what I'm here to do, right? That's what I'm obsessed with solving for. I want to see the broken rung get fixed. I want to see 100 women promoted into management for the first time for every 100 men. And we have a lot of room to improve when it comes to women of color getting equal opportunity, not to mention managerial support at equal rates, not only as men, but as white women do. So hello, thank you for being here. Delighted to share this space with you. I want to leave you with one last note. Ever since I heard this phrase, lifting as we climb, I've been inspired by it because it really speaks to me about playing the cards we've been dealt while we change the game. But I can't take credit for this, y'all. This stroke of genius was staring at me on a purple flag when I walked into the American Museum for African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. on the National Mall. Because it turns out this is the motto of America's first Black women's organizations. Started way back in 1896, lifting as we climb is that timeless and that American of a concept. We as women across the world, really, and across very diverse and different experiences can all do more by advocating for ourselves and then advocating for the world to be a little less harsh to women who follow in our footsteps, to require a little less self-advocacy from the women who come after us. I hope you'll take this and run with it, and I hope you'll run with the lessons learned from today. Thank you for being a part of this. I'll be in your inboxes soon. If you're a pod pal, I'll be in your earpods real soon. So make sure to go subscribe to the Bossed Up podcast if you aren't already, and we'll be coming out with a new episode for you real soon. Thanks, everybody.